but you have a contentious issue with somebody that fights in the name of God.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
Our contention is when people say that that's not what our book says.
In Islam, anything you do for the sake of God, it's a good action.
How do you know it's for the sake of God?
The heart.
What if a person sincerely tries to, they think that they're doing good for God by killing someone who doesn't agree or curses the Prophet, for example?
There are three people that will be judged first on the day of judgment according to the Prophet Muhammad. The first is somebody that learned the Quran by heart, learned and taught the Quran, and God is going to say, why did you do this? He said, I did it for you. He said, you're a liar. You said you did it, so people would say you are knowledgeable. Take your seat in the fire. You got what you received. Take your seat in the fire. The second is somebody that died in the name of Allah. He's going to say, what did you do? He said, I fought and was killed in your name. He said, you are a liar. You did it so people said you were brave. Take your seat into the fire.
So
third, I think, is for somebody charitable.
So what about that person, that martyr you talked about? What if that person is sincere? Like God judges that person is sincere. He went, fought somebody who he heard cursing Muhammad or whatever, slandering him and stuff like that, got into a fight with that person, ended up dying and killing that person.
That I've heard of any authority figure says you could kill somebody for cursing Muhammad. I don't think that's a different than somebody that's fighting for justice or something like that.
So that goes back to his question, what determines what is an act for God? Because if this person is saying I'm doing this for God sincerely,
the Prophet Muhammad. So first it's got to be something that aligns with what God said, because God said, "Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa raditu lakum al-islam dinan." This day I have perfected for you religion, completed my favor upon you, and chosen Islam as your way of life. It's a complete way of life. All the answers are already in it. And so anytime we want to see if this is a good thing or a bad thing, we look at the Quran, we look at the actions and the behavior of the Prophet Muhammad.
Okay. So a martyr can fit into that category.
Absolutely, a martyr can. And I think the Bible would say that as well.
So that's what I was asking. So the martyr who sincerely hears someone slandering the Prophet, right, goes to try and act to protect the reputation of Muhammad and fight for Allah, gets into a fight with this person, ends up dying and killing this person.
Yes.
But for the sake of Allah, for his convictions.
I would say Allahu Ta'ala means God knows best, because people have rights. Just because somebody offends you doesn't mean you have a right to kill them, which is different than fighting somebody who's fighting you. Because the Quran really says fight those who fight you, not fight those who just...
Sorry, Surah 9 verse 29 does not say that.
Huh?
Surah 9 verse 29 says fight those who believe not in God or the last day, and the reason it gives is because of what they believe, and that's how it's used throughout.
Because of what they believe?
Yeah. So it's not in self-defense. Hey, I mean, sorry, we've got to be honest. The Islamic Empire spreads across North Africa up the Silk Road. You can't say that's all in self-defense. That's offensive empire-building warfare, just as other empires did. So I'm not denying that only
because in the Bible it says that for I don't know if it was the Hebrews to go in and kill everybody, don't even leave cattle. So we know that God sanctions the murder, the killing of some people. Maybe we wouldn't call it murder.
Well, the difference is it was judgment on them for the sin that they committed and attacking Israel. In this situation, it's
worldwide forever.
It's worldwide forever.
Yeah, so this was with the Amalekites, it was specific to that time, to that nation,
but nonetheless,
while this is continuing.
Telling somebody to kill somebody in the name of God might be legitimate. It might be, because it's been done before. As far as Surah At-Tawbah, which is Surah 9, the context is for 13 years the Muslims were persecuted and they didn't fight back. They fled to Yathrib.
Persecuted by who?
Persecuted by the Meccans.
Okay, so
Muhammad is from Mecca.
No, I understand that. That was important, because the verse that he brought up is not talking about the Meccans.
That's what you think.
No, it says among the people of the book.
I'm going to tell you. It says of the people of the book. First he said means everybody. Now you're saying the people of the book. I think you're referring to the jizya.
So the context that the verse
9, verse 6, 20,
Surah 9 verse 29, the one he brought up, fight those who do not believe in Allah, not the last day, and yada yada, until they pay the jizya from the people of the book.
That's what I said.
Yeah, but that's included, but it's talking about the people of the book, the Jews and Christians.
Yes.
So this is
the Jews and the Christians were given a special special status to be able to pay the jizya.
Right. They had the yes.
Yes.
So, they still had to fight. Either they pay this jizya or they're fought for and it's all because of what they believe.
Yeah.
It's not because they're fighting Muhammad, not because they're fighting Islam. It's because of what they believe.
Kind of wrong at that time is because there was those religious factions fighting the Muslims at that time as well.
But not the Jews and Christians.
No, I'm saying there was, because there was, the Christians weren't as combative as the Jews at that time in that region, but there was Jewish tribes that had battles with the Muslims in the life of Muhammad.
So what about the Christians?
And so the point is this, and I'm trying to say the context, and I think most Islamic scholars who have authority in this area would say that it's referring to after 13 years of not fighting back, that you will be allowed to fight these groups of people. And so just how you said earlier, you can't nitpick one verse because the Quran explains the Quran and the Bible explains the Bible, same thing. When looking at it totally, it says fight those who fight you. People have rights. If somebody is not fighting you, then you could be kind to them. That's a verse in the Quran as well. And so I would say most scholars would say, you don't just go around killing just anybody because they're a Jew and Christian. You don't do that.
I guess in that case, it gets beyond what we can just do here. That's all. That you need to go and look at the books of Sharia and because the Quran revolves around Muhammad's life as well. There's abrogation. So things, at first he's saying don't fight, then there's fight in Surah 8 in self-defense. And then it's fight worldwide. I mean, that's how it becomes a worldwide empire. So there is that revolving around Muhammad's life.
It got abrogated.
With this whole entire, I guess we could say premise, maybe the right word, because we're Americans, and you would say that maybe fighting for capitalism is good, but maybe on the other hand, you would say fighting for creating a system where people could actually worship God is bad. And I would have a problem with that, because you're willing to fight and spend your money so people could fight and kill communists and kill these other political systems that really don't have anything to do with God, but you have a contentious issue with somebody that fights in the name of God.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
Our contention is when people say that that's not what our book says. Right?
Oh no, I'm saying it does not say that you could just go fight and kill somebody, like just anybody. It does not say that.
Well,
that's where we disagree. Because when you look at the verse, fight those who do not believe in Allah, nor the last day, yada yada yada, from the people of the book until they pay the jizya. So the people are being fought because of what they believe and their lack of belief in Islam. They're being fought for that. And if you look at the tafsirs and the rulings and the scholars, what they say, they give the context of what this was happening. They say it was after Muhammad conquered Arabia, and then he pointed his attention to the Christians.
And so
it was offensive, not defensive.
Yes, and I already established that everybody would agree that there's some beliefs that are worth fighting for. And so I'm not even now going to this, but just going to the premise that somebody's wrong for fighting for their beliefs, assuming that that's true, when it happens every single day.
What's your name?
Grant.
Avery.
Yes. Say it again?
Avery.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, most Americans would agree you could fight for capitalism as opposed to communism or socialism.
But like battle and
yes.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So
I'm not saying I agree with that, but most Americans.
Okay. So there's the difference between like fighting for something, right? Like when you're fighting for something, there's an opposing, there's an opposition,
yes.
Right? So you can defend your position and fight for it in that sense. However, is that the Muslims have to be in a position where they can do this. There has to be a caliphate, and they can do it. They can send out the order. Let's fight those who don't believe.
So if there's no caliphate today, if that's the case, if what you're saying is true, then why are Muslims fighting even if it's unjust?
Well, yeah, so
there's no caliphate today.
Right. So
been a caliphate for a long time.
You're right.
Yeah.
So that's what stopped, I guess, there's no army right now. You have these factions,
right,
but there's no all-together army moving as one to go and start, doing what they're doing, taking over, fighting those, and establishing Sharia, right? That has to be done with a caliphate prophet? Is there a leader?
Christianity was established in the size that it is today. Didn't somebody fight and kill over Christianity?
So there were crusades and stuff like that,
But
but
before that, that's not when Christianity got big at.
yeah, well, Christianity got big off of witness. It wasn't fighting at first.
No, it was
Yeah.
Constantine.
Yeah, how did he do it? How did
He
he
had
do
a
it?
dream, and he said, "I had a dream that said fight for this."
But wait, how did it get to Constantine in the first place?
Probably the messages of Paul.
Exactly. So you have the early Christians
Yes.
did not spread by the sword, but they spread by the
How many
gospel.
was it?
It grew. At first,
No, up to that point, how many was it?
what do you mean? Like during Constantine?
About Constantine's, how many Christians were there?
Oh, so by Constantine's time, the empire was mostly Christian. It was transforming at that time.
Yeah.
So you have big numbers of Christianity now. Constantine's time, you have a big group of Christians now, where as opposed to that, started off with 12, grew. Now Constantine,
And then
it spread.
At what point did it become a world power?
I don't
Or any
know.
power? Or I mean, Constantine through the sword.
I don't know. I gotta look at that. I gotta look that
Yeah,
up.
right.
But what I'm saying, so let's take this for example.
The only reason I say that is if you condemn what you're condemning now, you would have to condemn that as well.
Of course, if I'm consistent, because so this is my position and the biblical position. You cannot spread your faith by the sword. You cannot fight people because they disbelieve what you believe.
Yes.
That's according to our scripture. So if there's people,
to the Old Testament, but continue.
no, so we can break this down.
Right.
So when it comes to what Jesus taught, spread the message, spread the gospel, put down your sword, right? You can defend yourself if you need to, if necessary, but don't go out cutting people's ear off. I had to put them back like Peter did. So when it came to the message of the gospel, it's you are witnesses of this. Spread it to all nations. That's it, not with the sword. And that's how it was done. Now, if there's Christians, right, who come later on and start spreading by the sword,
Right.
I condemn that because that goes against the scripture. That's my position. Now, and my critique against Islam is consistent because it's in the scripture. You feel me? It's in the Quran and the Hadiths
Right.
and what the scholars teach.
That fighting is in. So fighting is a bad thing.
And so I'm still one being.
Overall, you cannot fight.
No.
Kill.
No, my thing is fighting people for their lack of belief
Yes.
and imposing your religion on them. That right there.
There's two different things because I don't even think most people who are against Islam would claim that they impose their religion on anybody. Because you admitted that they would just have to pay the jizya. And when they paid the jizya...
It's imposed on them.
No. When they paid the jizya, they were allowed to practice their own religion.
But
For
that's-
example, the jizya is every Muslim has to pay a tax.
Yeah.
It's called zakat. The non-Muslim under jizya does not pay that tax because it's an act of worship for Muslims. That's why they pay the jizya.
Yeah.
And then you become a dhimmi. A dhimmi is the word, what you become.
Yeah.
Muhammad said,
You can become a dhimmi.
Anybody that transgresses the rights of a dhimmi, I will be his advocate against the Muslim on the Day of Judgment.
Okay.
You know Christians went to the Muslim lands because they were getting persecuted worse by the Christians, other Christians.
Wait, Christians?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know how true that is, but let's just stick with what the verses are saying.
The Inquisitions and all these things were occurring, and Christians were slaughtering Christians for differences in belief. They would go to the Muslim land. The Jews in 1492, Ferdinand and Isabella not only sent Columbus to America, they kicked out all the Jews out of Spain.
But Grant,
They went
but listen.
with the Muslims.
My opposition,
Yes.
my critique is not there are bad Muslims that do certain things or whatever. Therefore, Islam is false.
Yes.
My critique is the Quran itself.
Yes.
So if people are claiming to be Christians, going out killing folk for the faith,
Yes.
they're wrong.
Yes.
I condemn it.
Yes.
So I'm talking about what the Quran says and what my Bible says. So the Quran says that like this jizya, it's imposed on them. You feel
Okay.
me?
So-
like they didn't do it on their free will. They it's either fight and you pay the jizya or be fought. That's what it was.
So if I were to show you in the Old Testament where people were told to be murdered and killed because they didn't believe in a certain religion, would you condemn that as well?
That's not the case, bro.
not the case.
So let's take for example the example you brought up, the Amalekites. Do you know what the Amalekites did for God to send that judgment on them?
What did they do?
So they attacked Israel. They attacked Israel when they was escaping Egypt. They attacked them from behind, attacked the old, and yada yada yada. God said, "I'm going to wipe them out," and so that's when that command came down for the Amalekites. Erase that nation.
Yeah, including
everything, animals, everything that's in that
even those
nation.
that didn't have a part in it.
Everything that's in all of it. It's a judgment
Even the
on
children.
it's a judgment on that
Even the
nation.
children.
Everyone.
Everyone.
So do you have a problem with that?
No, I don't have
Okay,
a problem.
okay, just making
But according
sure.
To your argument, perhaps you should.
No, I don't, because remember, my argument is not. Look, listen. My argument is not. You believe differently than I do, therefore we got to kill you. My argument is that is wrong. That you believe differently than me,
Right.
so therefore I can kill you.
Yeah.
That right there is wrong. So I wanted to show you
Yes.
Ibn Kathir's Tafsir, right?
Okay.
And so it says here, just wanted you to see it. It's small, sorry, but it talks about why the ayah was revealed, right? So it starts off by saying, this honorable ayah was revealed for fight against those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, so they pay the jizya, for themselves to do, right? Among the people of the scripture. This honorable ayah was revealed with the order to fight the people of the book after the pagans were defeated, right? And then he says, the people entered Allah's religion in large numbers, and the Arabian Peninsula was secured under the Muslims' control. So after Muhammad gained control, defeated his enemies, then he got the order to fight the people of the book, right? The Jews and the Christians. Then it says, Jews and Christians on the 9th year of the Hijrah, and he prepared his army to fight the Romans and called the people to jihad, announcing his intent and destination. The messenger sent his intent to various areas. People gathered, and it starts talking about how the weather was wrong, and then they didn't end up fighting. They had to turn back. And then it breaks down the jizya, or the willing submission, right? So paying the jizya, if they do not choose to embrace Islam. So that's what I'm talking about, it being imposed on them.
Yes, so at that time they're fighting Christians who are imposing their religion on other people?
No, they have nothing to do with Islam. Muhammad is expanding.
So this is what you said. They're given the right to fight Christians, and then they're going to go fight the Roman Empire.
That's what's
you didn't
happening.
say they're going to go fight Joe Schmo Christian walking down the street. They're going to go fight the great and bad Roman Empire stuff.
Because they want them to embrace Islam.
No, not because they want them to embrace Islam, because they want them to pay the jizya.
And embrace Islam.
They don't want... Of course, you want everyone to become a Muslim, but if I say become a Muslim, you can say it in your heart, but it's not going to be in your heart.
But that's what was happening a lot.
It's two different things. But my point is this: you said they're allowed to fight the Christians, then they go fight the Roman Empire.
They're the Christians.
You know how many Christians that was?
They were the Byzantine Empire. That was
100,000 versus 20 or 30,000.
They were the Christians.
Yes.
That's who they were.
My point is this: to conflate that he's going to fight these Christians, and you're making the claim almost that he's going to fight any Christian. And I'm saying there's a difference between the two. That this verse doesn't mean you could just fight anybody because they're Christian, which is what you guys were trying to say.
No, so all I'm doing is showing you an example of him going to fight the Christians.
No, you gave me the context of the verse.
Yeah.
That's the context of the verse. And they're allowed to fight the Jews and Christians, and then he went to go
fight the
Roman Empire.
Yes.
Not against any Christian, because there was
those are the any Christians.
They were Christians that lived inside of Medina at that time.
And what did they have to do?
Lay them to the sword.
They did. They had to, man, unless they paid the jizya. All the Christians and Jews, everybody in the people of the book that lived under Muhammad's authority had to pay the jizya or embrace Islam.
Yes.
That's being imposed.
Yes.
Okay.
You have to pay a tax in America.
So?
Is it imposed?
I live here.
Okay.
But
these Christians lived under Muslim land. You just said
no.
that.
So would there be a way for me to not to pay the tax?
Would there be no? It's tax.
Exactly. So notice how in Muhammad's authority, I don't have to pay this tax if I become a Muslim.
No, but then you pay zakat, which is obligatory in every Muslim.
No. So why doesn't he just apply the zakat to everyone?
Because zakat is an act of worship, and worship is only for the Muslims. You can't force the Christians and Jews to submit to your act of worship.
But they are.
They've got their own worship. No, they don't. And nobody who studies history or in academia is going to say that they didn't allow the Jews and the Christians to practice their own religion. Because they did.
But they had to do it under a certain guideline. Have you heard of the Pact of Umar?
The Pact of Umar.
Yeah.
What is it?
So it was
yes.
Yeah. Okay. So.
But they were allowed to practice their religion.
Yeah, under conditions.
Under conditions.
They couldn't preach.
They couldn't. Here
No. But listen to these conditions. They couldn't preach.
Yes.
They couldn't build new churches. They couldn't reform their churches.
Yes.
Right. They couldn't. They had to wear certain clothes. They couldn't wear a cross. All these conditions, like you cannot do these things, right? You cannot do these things, or else you are subject to the law law now.
Yes.
That's not freedom. That's not freedom of expression of your religion. You wouldn't know that, right? Imagine if I said that what's it called when the Muslims wear the
kufi.
Thank you.
Yes.
What if I say you can practice your religion, you can believe in your religion, but you can't wear the kufi?
Well, they definitely do that in America. They tell you how to express your religion.
They don't tell you how to dress.
But there's certain aspects of your religion that they
Come on,
that you
man.
practice. You don't think so?
Bro, no. America doesn't tell you how to dress.
America doesn't tell you.
Yes, and that
America
either.
doesn't tell you how to dress today.
So-
They do tell you how to dress, brother. You can't go around walking around naked.
Come on, man. Grant, come on.
Strong man though, like America's not a prophet.
Yes.
Like not a religious leader. It's just a country.
It's two different things.
But the point is this: if it's bad in one area, by definition, you got to say it's bad in the other.
Absolutely. So for us to say that Islam is from God, we can't say it's from God if it's given these bad
Say that
laws.
when you don't know.
We do know.
No, that's your belief, and God will judge between us two.